gold. Get ready to blow the dust off your turntables and dive headfirst into the forgotten corners of rock and roll history. This is your backstage pass to 13 obscure rock bands from the 60s and 70s, the underdogs, the unsung heroes, the fuzz-pedal freaks who carved killer riffs and unforgettable grooves, only to vanish like smoke after the encore. So crank the volume, hit that like button like it's a cowbell, and stay tuned, because we're about to resurrect some serious lost legends. You might just find your new favorite old band, media culture, and suburban life. Live performances were a huge part of their identity, full of elaborate props, costumes, dancers, and bizarre characters. It was part rock concert, part theater, part circus. That theatricality made them a sensation live, but harder to market on radio and record. Fee Waybill, their lead vocalist, was known for his outrageous onstage personas. Their hit songs include their over-the-top live shows gained them a loyal fan base and critical respect. Being edgy and pushing boundaries on TV and stage, they blended satirical songwriting and genre-bending music, which gained them a huge fan base. Their controversial content made some radio stations and networks reluctant to promote them. Their theatrical, often risque lifestyle didn't always translate to record sales. The Pretty Things were one of the rawest and most influential British rock bands of the 60s, often overshadowed by their more famous peers like the Rolling Stones, but hugely respected in underground and proto-punk circles. Formed in 1963 in London, the Pretty Things were fronted by Phil May and Dick Taylor, the latter of whom had actually been an early member of the Rolling Stones before leaving to form his own band. They were named after a Bo Diddley song, Pretty Thing, and started off as a hard-edged R&B group. They were gritty, loud, rebellious, and wild, arguably too wild for the mainstream at the time. The Pretty Things evolved across decades. From the early to mid-60s, their music was of raw R&B and garage rock. In the late 60s, they moved into psychedelia and art rock, eventually creating one of rock's earliest rock operas. From the 70s and beyond, they shifted toward hard rock, glam, and later proto-punk sounds. Their hit songs include I want around, we are the ground. SF Sorrow is born. SF Sorrow, SF Sorrow. Buzz around, but you don't stay. You take a chance, don't lose it. They're often credited as an influence on later punk and underground acts, and they were far more aggressive and transgressive than many of their peers. Phil May passed away in 2020, but the band's legacy remains as one of the most underrated forces in British rock. I'll make you feel glad, baby. Pays the price, works the seasons through. If you're into lush, symphonic rock with a classical touch and ethereal vocals, Renaissance is pure gold. They were a cornerstone of progressive rock in the 70s, but with a totally different vibe than Yes or Genesis. Renaissance originally formed in 1969 by ex-Yardbirds members Keith Relf and Jim McCarty, but the classic lineup that most fans remember came a few years later, when the group was practically rebuilt with a new cast. The definitive Renaissance lineup included Annie Haslam, Michael Dunford, John Tout, John Camp, and Terry Sullivan. Renaissance blended progressive rock, classical music, folk, and a touch of jazz. They were known for long, intricate compositions with string and orchestral arrangements, piano-driven melodies, and poetic lyrics. Their songs often reference literature, history, mythology, and spiritual themes. Unlike many prog bands of their time, they didn't use electric guitar much. Their sound was more pastoral and symphonic than heavy and psychedelic. Their hit songs include Silver
to find. Walking the shadow, see the carpet of the sun, the green grass soft and sweet. Mother's son, freedom's overdue.
Renaissance found more success in Europe and the US Northeast than in the mainstream charts. Their sound was too refined and artistic for radio at a time when rock was getting louder and more raw. But among prog fans and classical music lovers, they were adored. The Move was one of the most innovative yet underrated British rock bands of the 1960s. Formed in 1965 in Birmingham, England, they are known for their eclectic mix of psychedelic rock, power pop, and early hard rock. They had a knack for catchy melodies, bold experimentation, and wild stage antics, including smashing televisions instead of guitars. The Move is best remembered for their sophisticated songwriting, lush harmonies, and heavier rock sound, which laid the groundwork for electric light orchestra. Their hit songs include Their management never properly pushed them in the US, unlike their British contemporaries. Bandleader Roy Wood was a musical genius, but members constantly came and went, affecting their consistency. They evolved from psychedelic pop to heavier rock, confusing some fans and making it hard to market them with a single identity. If you like your music loud, anarchic, psychedelic, and laced with attitude, the Pink Fairies were the real deal. They were part of the same countercultural stew that birthed Hawkwind, and they brought a gritty, fuzz-drenched, acid biker punk energy to the early 70s. Formed in 1970 in London, the Pink Fairies were kind of a cosmic joke and a serious band all at once. They came out of the UK underground scene and were very much part of the Notting Hill freak scene, aligned with anarchists, Hells Angels, and anti-establishment vibes. The Pink Fairies mixed heavy psych rock, proto-punk, garage, stoner fuzz, and cosmic nonsense with real-world rebellion. Their sound was raw, DIY, and built for blasting out of busted speakers. You could say they were the UK's answer to the MC5. They encouraged their fans to do it themselves, literally one of their most famous tracks. Their hit songs include The Pink Fairies were too wild and unpredictable, both musically and personally. They didn't bother about their commercial image and thrived more in free festivals, squat parties, and underground clubs than in the mainstream spotlight. But as history says, you don't have to be commercially successful to have a cult following. The Pink Fairies just proved that. The Soft Boys were like the mad scientists of late 70s underground rock. Too weird for punk, too raw for psych pop, too brilliant to ignore. Formed in Cambridge, England around 1976, the Soft Boys started off as a sort of art rock oddity amid the rising tide of punk. Led by the wonderfully eccentric and surreal Robin Hitchcock, the band quickly became known for their twisted pop sensibility, psych-drenched guitar work, absurd lyrics, and punk energy. Their music was a mix of 60s psychedelia, post-punk tension, jangly power pop, and lyrical absurdity. They stood out in the punk-drenched UK of the late 70s by not playing by the rules. Instead of three-chord anthems, they wrote twisted melodic masterpieces filled with odd time signatures, double-track guitars, and lyrics about lobsters, insects, and existential dread. Their hit songs include
the damage that we do, it just goes on and on and on, not long enough.
Most of these songs are from their absolute classic album, Underwater Moonlight, a cult legend, and widely regarded as one of the most influential, should-have-been huge albums of the era. However, they were too melodic for punk, too strange for pop, and too early for the indie explosion. Now that's one of the most underrated bands of the entire 60s British rock scene. They were mod, they were art rock, they were proto-punk, and they were wildly ahead of their time. If you mashed up The Who, The Kinks, and early Hendrix, then added an actual paint-splashing guitar solo, you'd start to get the vibe. Formed in 1966 in Hertfordshire, England, the Creation started off in the same orbit as The Who and Small Faces, but they never got the same commercial traction, despite being just as innovative. The Creation were mod rockers with psychedelic flair. They combined crunchy power chords, sharp, punchy pop hooks, abstract lyrical themes, and freak beat and R&B grooves. Their art-inspired performances were epic, including splattering paint on a canvas during shows while soloing. Their hit songs include The Creation were art school rockers, which is wild because they actually sang about art, like in Painter Man. Their influence reached into punk, glam, garage rock, and Britpop.
I'll never see a door now. Oh, my heart beats so inside.
These guys are one of the most beloved cult bands of British psychedelia. Formed in London in 1967, Kaleidoscope created dreamy, whimsical, highly imaginative music full of strange characters, fantasy landscapes, and gentle melodies that float like a mushroom trip through a Victorian storybook. They were signed to Fontana and later released music under the name Fairfield Parlour in the early 70s. Their music style was unique. Trippy English folk storytelling with Baroque pop arrangements and soft melodies that hide existential dread. They weren't heavy like Cream or Hendrix, but rather melodic and introspective, with a real Lewis Carroll meets Pink Floyd vibe. Their hit songs include
Please excuse my face, blushing smile. As the children flew by, a garden, a chariot.
Their key album was Tangerine Dream in 1967. This LP is an essential British psych artifact. All lush strings, harpsichords, odd lyrical themes, and that signature dreamy vibe. The Zombies were an English rock band formed in St. Albans, Hertfordshire, in 1961. Known for their sophisticated melodies, lush harmonies, and jazz-influenced arrangements, they stood out among their British invasion peers.
If she should tell you, I love you. Whoa, whoa.
Their music blended Baroque pop, psychedelia, and R&B, creating a unique and timeless sound. Their hit songs include
Let me tell you about the way she looked, the way she acted, the color of her hair.
It's the time of the season when we love.
Tell her no, no, no.
Despite their critical acclaim and a handful of hits, the Zombies struggled to achieve lasting mainstream success. Their sophisticated jazz-influenced sound was often seen as too refined for the pop-dominated charts of the mid-1960s.
Tell her no, 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 no.
Standing on a go-kart, dressed in PVC.
Caravan, one of the key players in the Canterbury scene, and a band that blends prog rock, jazz, and psychedelic whimsy into something entirely their own. These guys are the sound of England's eccentric intellectuals, crafting lush, jazzy soundscapes with an air of whimsical surrealism. If you like long, winding compositions, quirky lyrics, and a dash of British humor, then Caravan is your perfect musical escape. Formed in 1968 in Canterbury, England, Caravan became one of the leading lights of the Canterbury scene, a movement known for blending progressive rock, jazz, and avant-garde influences with a distinctly British sense of humor and whimsy. Caravan's sound is known for its melodic prog rock, often with elements of jazz fusion and psychedelic whimsy. The band was deeply influenced by classical and Baroque music, which is reflected in their complex arrangements and elaborate song structures. But what makes Caravan stand out is their playful British eccentricity and with a touch of humor and quirky British charm. Their hit songs include
Cigarette burn bright tonight, they'll all get washed down the road. In fine weather, but all together, on the go. Where I listen to the wind singing.
While the album In the Land of Grey and Pink in 1971 was critically beloved, Caravan didn't break into the mainstream in the way some of their peers did. Their unique blend of jazz, rock, and folk made them hard to categorize.
So we sail away for just one day to the land where the buckwheat grows. You won't need.
Soft Machine was one of the most pioneering, avant-garde, and influential bands to come out of the late 60s British scene. They were the blueprint for progressive rock, jazz fusion, and avant-garde experimentation. If you're into bands that deconstruct musical boundaries and are willing to embrace the weird, the cerebral, and the complex, Soft Machine is your ticket to the space jazz rock odyssey. Soft Machine was formed in 1966 in Canterbury, England, and is one of the key bands of the Canterbury scene. The band's sound evolved dramatically over time, from psychedelic rock to jazz fusion to avant-garde progressive rock, but they were always at the cutting edge of music. Soft Machine's sound is notoriously eclectic, and they evolved dramatically over their career. In their early years, their music was psychedelic, whimsical, jazzy rock. The band was heavily influenced by Pink Floyd and the Beatles, but with a more experimental edge. By the mid-1970s, their music was a jazz fusion explosion, blending free jazz, prog rock, and electronic experimentation. Their sound grew much more complex and instrumental during this phase, with a strong emphasis on improvisation. Their hit songs include
She's running to hate, but it's just too late for me.
Soft Machine's music was too complex for mainstream audiences. Their music wasn't easy to digest. Their avant-garde approach and jazz-heavy experimentation made them more of a cult band. Comus is one of the most bizarre and intense cult favorites in rock history. They've been described as a mix of psych folk, prog, and avant-garde with a hauntingly unsettling edge. Comus never became a household name, but they're beloved by those who crave the eerie, the dark, and the experimental. Formed in 1969 in London, Comus was a progressive folk band that blended traditional English folk music with surreal, psychedelic, and darkly theatrical elements. Their music often explored occult themes, fantasy, and mysticism, but with an unsettling, almost menacing vibe. Comus's sound is a strange mix of psychedelic folk, progressive rock, and avant-garde, with ethereal melodies layered with disturbing and surreal lyrics. Their music draws heavily from traditional British folk, but it is twisted and darkened by psych and Baroque influences. The band is often compared to the Incredible String Band, but with a much darker tone, and folk bands like Pentangle, but Comus leaned more into nightmarish, eerie territory than their contemporaries. Their hit songs include Despite their creativity and the influence of First Utterance, they never released another album in their original run, leaving them as a cult one-album band. The Magic Band was the backing band of American singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Captain Beefheart between 1967 and 1982. Captain Beefheart, born Don Van Vliet, was one of rock music's most eccentric and boundary-pushing artists. His band, Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band, is remembered for its unique and unconventional approach to music, mixing blues, jazz, avant-garde rock, and free-form improvisation. Known for their angular, dissonant rhythms, complex song structures, and Van Vliet's primal, often strange vocals, the band defied traditional rock conventions and created a sound that still feels radical today. Their hit songs include Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band are considered one of the most influential experimental rock acts in history, despite never reaching the commercial success of their contemporaries. Their 1969 album, Trout Mask Replica, is often cited as one of the most important albums in avant-garde rock and is celebrated for its unorthodox approach to music composition and structure. Their music was both challenging and alienating to mainstream audiences. And there you have it, 13 hidden gems that prove rock's golden era had way more to offer than just the usual chart toppers. These bands may not have packed stadiums or topped Billboard, but they left behind riffs, vibes so good they deserve a second spin, maybe even a first for some of you. If you discovered a new favorite today, drop it in the comments. We want to know which band melted your face the most. And hey, if you've got a deep-cut band we missed, bring the noise. We're always down to dig deeper into the vault. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that bell so you don't miss the next trip through rock's backroads. Until then, keep it loud, keep it weird, and keep rockin'.